Part 25. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 243. Chi Heiran pondered. Mu Yangling pointed to the map and said, "The soldiers are divided into 3 groups, and the first one is to be ambushed here in advance. Remember, you must wear the military uniform of the Golden Soldiers, and the other 2 groups will take a shortcut to surround Zixia's guards from here, and all the way is responsible for attracting them. The other way is to go to the race course to steal horses, and immediately retreat from the ambush road after stealing the horses. At that time, the Zixia soldiers will definitely find out our real purpose, and they will go after them. They will be ambushed when they chase here, and they will be led directly to the guards of the Kingdom of Jin. Remember, you must pretend to be powerless." Chi Heiran's eyes sparkled. "If you clean up the traces, they won't be able to guess that we did it." Mu Yangling nodded. "Those who go to steal horses and attract troops must wear our Dazu military uniforms, but the clothes can be a bit more mixed. For example, there are 200 households in a team. They will think that the person who took a shortcut and left is trying to put the blame on the Jin soldiers of the Great Zhou, but it will increase their credibility." Chi Heiran rolled his eyes and said, "It's better to send a few more people to attack the Jin soldiers at critical times, shoot a few rockets in the guard, let Jinguo and Zixia fight, and even if they guess that they were tricked by us, they will also form hatred." Mu Yangling's eyes were bright, as if there was a fire in his eyes. "Chi Heiran, you are so smart, just do it like this, but the person who goes to do this has to be more flexible, they can't be caught by them, and neither can our corpses leave it to them." Chi Heiran nodded. "It seems that I still have to prepare a few sets of Zixia military uniforms." After speaking, he frowned and said, "But the guardhouse is not far from that road, and my people are not familiar with that area, only know about it. What if you can't attract people here?" "My father is familiar with mountains and forests, as long as he has a general direction, he can always find the guard." Chi Heiran scratched his head, and said distressedly, "But your father has asked me to send him out, and he won't be back in a short time." Mu Yangling glared at him. "You won't ask my father to do fine work again, will you?" Chi Heiran didn't deny it. Mu Yangling gritted his teeth and said, "My father has 100 households, why do you still ask him to do this? Don't be disgusted, this job has done a lot of work, and you can build a military quickly. It was your father who asked for it." Chi Heiran glanced at him and said, "Your brother is the first in the academy this year. Will your brother be expelled from your family before taking the imperial examination?" Mu Yangling gritted her teeth, but she had nothing to say. She was silent for a while and said, "Can I have military merit?" "No, you're a girl," Chi Heiran said. "The female generals of my court have long been cancelled." Emperor Sejong had female generals at that time, but once Emperor Sejong died, Emperor Jaozong let the 2 female generals be raised. There have been no female generals in Dazu for 100 years. Then put the credit in my father's name." Chi Heiran thought for a while, nodded and said, "Okay, but, are you planning to go with me? You have to think clearly, you may not be able to survive after going to the battlefield." "Don't worry, I'm just going to shoot cold arrows at Jin Kuoi's place. It won't kill me. In the mountains, no one can kill me," Mu Yangling said. "I'm only responsible for attracting Jin soldiers and Zixia soldiers to meet each other. I don't care." Chi Heiran nodded, and said confidently, "The only thing I lack is this: how many people do you need?" 3. Mu Yangling said, "The clothes, arrows and knives should all be the styles and symbols of Zixia. No, if you meet Zixia soldiers, do you also use this arrow? I will give you half of the unmarked arrows, and you can use them to shoot anyone." The 2 discussed the time of action and the number of people involved in the action. Only after the plan was finalized did Mu Yangling have time to eat the snacks on the table. She poured herself 2 cups of tea and asked, "I heard you withdrew the 2 training regiments." Chi Heiran snorted coldly, "It's enough to give them face after I endured it for a year before getting rid of them." Originally, I thought I would endure it for a year, and it's okay to endure him for a few more years, but the two of them dared to bring them together. Bing Qian came to rob the people, and they didn't kill them because they were born and died with the big brother. When the two regiments led troops to guard the Hanshong mansion, they clashed with the people. Fortunately, no one was killed in the end. Otherwise, with Qi Heiran's temper, these two people would not have survived. I'll follow you, but I don't worry about my family. You have to send some reliable people to look after my house. No problem, don't worry, your mother and younger siblings were what they were when you left, and they will still be what they were when you came back. Only then did Mu Yangling leave in peace. Fei Bai had a headache and said, Master, we have already asked 6 people to take turns guarding the Mu family. Isn't it too much to add more people? Add 3 more. I asked them to protect from a distance because I was afraid that a Ling would find out, but now I tell them to shorten the distance. If something happens to the Mu family, they will immediately support them. Fei Bai didn't dare to say that Miss Mu had arrested those 6 people before, so he could only smile and say, Don't worry, General, I'll let them bury them in the ground. Not only those who go to find fault will not find out, even Miss Mu will not find out, can't find it. Qi Heiran patted him on the head and said, Didn't you hear Ah Ling say that? The most powerful trick is not to hide from being discovered, but to stand there and let everyone take it for granted. What is the use of burying you in the ground? Fei Bai smiled wryly, but the people in Jinggutan are simple, and Mu Yangling knows everyone in it. As long as there are strangers coming in and out, Mu Yangling must know, so why should it be taken for granted? But he didn't dare to say this, thinking that Mu Yangling knew that there were people protecting her near her home anyway, so if she wasn't strict, she wouldn't be strict, as long as she could fool other people. Mu Yangling went back and went up the mountain to cut 2 carts of firewood. Ziyuheng dragged the dry branches over and asked her to tie them up, saying, Cousin, these branches are too small to be burned. We have to cut down some big trees. It's not too small. Cut off a little more of these first. I'll look back and see if there are no big trunks. I'll cut them down again. Everyone cut down the whole tree. Mu Yangling turned around and looked at her seriously, and said, That's someone else. I don't agree to cut down the whole tree. Ziyuheng, I'm a hunter, I rely on mountains for food, I haven't cut down a whole tree since I grew up. My father didn't agree. No. Ziyuheng thought for a while, nodded and said, Okay, then I won't cut down the whole tree in the future. You don't have to worry. I am strong and my speed is several times faster than others. If I walk a few more times a day, I will definitely be able to chop enough firewood for my family before the winter solstice. Mu Yangling took 2 carts of firewood home and put them in the yard to dry. Xiaolin and Bowen helped Bosi and Kijia out, and carefully taught them to walk. When they saw Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng, Bowen shouted happily, Sister, our academy is on holiday, and the master has assigned a lot of homework, let us stay at home. Study, and go to school next spring. Mu Yangling patted the sawdust on his body and said, It's really early for your academy to have a holiday. You have to stay at home for more than 3 months. But thinking that Bowen and the others don't have the so-called summer vacation, they are relieved. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 244. Bowen said, Mr. said that there is no winter vacation in the south, unlike here, where it is so cold that people can freeze in winter, so we must have a vacation, otherwise the students will freeze to death in the academy. Mu Yangling was taken aback. Your husband is on winter vacation because of this. Winter vacation? Bowen tilted his head and said, Isn't it winter vacation? Our husband called it winter vacation. Yes, winter vacation, Mu Yangling said thoughtfully. It turns out that the winter vacation is because the winter is too cold. Will the students freeze to death in the academy? Mu Yangling went to hug Kijia and Bosi, and asked, Isn't it going to be the first birthday of these two soon? That's a big day. Mu Yangling remembered that she was probably still in Hanshong Mansion that day, and she might not make it in time. It's their first birthday. Mu Yangling went to Xu Wanyang and said, "Mother, Bosi and Kijia's 1-year-old father may not be able to come back in time." Xu Wanyang embroidered for a while, then smiled and said, "It's fine if you don't come back in time, the same is true for you to host." Mu Yangling looked down at his toes and said, "I may not be able to make it back." Xu Wanyang put down her things, sat upright, and looked at her daughter. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to Hanshong Mansion with the little general." "I have something to do." Mu Yangling thought for a while and said, "Mother, why don't I ask my cousin and aunt to come over and help?" Xu Wanyang shook her head. "Your father and you must be together, Aling. This is the biggest banquet for our Mu family to move here. Not only the neighbors from Linchin village will come, but also the folks from Chinggutun. Mother, it's not impossible to do it with my aunt, but the head of the Mu family must be there. This is an attitude that will further strengthen your position, and everyone will not dare to object if you speak outside for the Mu family in the future." Seeing her daughter bowing her head, Xu Wanyang asked, "When will you be back?" 29 can come back at the latest. They launched an attack on 26, and Hanshong Mansion can arrive here in a day. Even if there is an accident, 29 should have arrived. The birthdays of Kijia and Bosi are on the 27th. Xu Wanyang said, "Then postpone the first birthday by 2 days, and your aunt and I can arrange other things. You just need to show up at noon on the 29th day and carry your younger siblings to catch the week." A smile appeared on Mu Yangling's face, and he hugged his mother's arm and said, "Mother, don't worry, I will definitely be back before noon on the 29th. Xu Wanyang nodded her daughter's forehead. I don't care what you and the little general do outside, but you have to take care of yourself, you know." Mu Yangling nodded. "Mother, don't worry, I cherish my life very much. I know that as long as I live, there is hope. If I die, I have nothing." Xu Wanyang hugged her daughter, patted her on the shoulder lightly and said, "It's good that you understand. Then when will you leave?" 23 and go. Xu Wanyang frowned. "You're going for 7 days? That's too long." "Mother, don't worry, the little general has someone guarding our house in secret. Just sleep at night. If you have something to do, just do as I told you, throw the lamp out of the window and light the hay below. The soldiers of the 5th Battalion will see it come over." There was always a handful of hay under the window of Xu Wanyang and her aunt, and Mu Yangling replaced it every day. Xu Wanyang didn't understand why before, but now she finally understands. My aunt disapproved of Mu Yangling's behavior of leaving home, and she didn't understand that Xu Wanyang didn't stop her. "Aling is a girl, why do you rest assured that she will go out with the little general for so many days? Are you such a mother hummer?" "Auntie, Aling knows what she wants, she was never a child." Xu Wanyang always felt that her daughter was fulfilling her adult obligations, so she deserved her adult rights. She was not smart enough, but she understood her daughter. She is thoughtful and sometimes even worse than her husband. How can she treat such a daughter as ordinary people? Since she supported the price at a young age and took on the responsibility of supporting the family, then she should have the right to control the family, and she should be more free to come and go. So Xu Wanyang blocked all the aunt's objections for Mu Yangling, and told her to just prepare her things and leave, and she and her aunt would take care of her at home. Seeing Xu Wanyang dragging her feet, my aunt was so angry that she didn't talk to her for 2 days. "Aling," my aunt said with a straight face, "Auntie knows you are capable, but no matter how capable you are still a girl. How can you go out with a bunch of men for so many days? And how old are you this year? Wait for your father. How can I explain to him when I come back?" "Oh, Auntie, I'm leaving tomorrow, why are you still struggling with this?" My mother agreed. "You don't have to do anything, just set up a cover for me. If anyone in the village asks, just said that I went away to relatives, said that something happened to our relative's house. I went to help, and came back in 2 days. If no one asked, that would be even better, and they would not dare to mess with our family. The ant stared at her fiercely. Wait for your father to come back. My father will definitely not scold me when he comes back. My father will unconditionally obey whatever my mother agrees to. The ant could only stare. Mu Yangling gave Ziyuheng a wink. Ziyuheng immediately climbed onto the Kong and hugged her arm. Grandma, it's getting cold today, can our rabbits survive the winter? Do you want to cover them with a quilt? Go, what kind of quilt should you build? Take out the remaining wheat straw, dry it, and scatter it in the shed, and then block the place where the air leaks. Isn't my cousin and cousin's first birthday coming soon? How many tables will we invite? Mu Yangling quietly slipped back to his room. She breathed a sigh of relief, wiped the dagger left by her grandfather and put it aside, took out the sleeve arrow Chi-Heiran gave her and examined it carefully. Bowen suddenly appeared in front of her and startled her. You startled me. Mu Yangling pulled his younger brother to his side, and said, you can walk without making a sound. How did you do that? Sister, what are you going to do? Mu Yangling leaned into his ear and said, my sister is going to get something. I didn't even tell my mother about it. You have to keep it a secret. Mu Bowen suddenly felt a manly feeling of being trusted and entrusted. He looked at Mu Yangling with firm eyes and said, don't worry, sister, I will keep it a secret for you. He forgot what he wanted to ask before. Sister trusts you. Mu Yangling asked him to sit on the Kong, and whispered in his ear, you are the only man in our family. If your sister goes out, you have to protect your mother and younger brothers and sisters, you know. Mu Bowen nodded fiercely, but asked in doubt, isn't Dad a man? Mu Yangling said, isn't Dad not at home often? So you are the only man left in the family. My brother is still young, and he will be a man when he grows up to be your age. Mu Bowen looked at the short knife his sister put on the Kong and said, all men have knives. Mu Yangling thought for a while, then found the gem-encrusted sword from the box, pulled it open and closed it, handed it to his younger brother, and said, you have to put it away, it's for you to protect yourself and your family. Such a weapon cannot be taken out easily, and once it is taken out, it will be bloody. Mu Bowen clenched the sword tightly with both hands, looked into his sister's eyes and said seriously, don't worry, sister, I will definitely protect mother, aunt, cousin, and younger brothers and sisters. Mu Yangling showed a gratified smile. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 245. You've been wandering in the woods for a day and a night, how are you? How sure are you? Chi-Heiran asked Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling took a sip of water and said, I only took the road to the 5-mile radius of the guard. I'm only 70% sure. It depends on the cooperation of the people who ambushed here. Chi-Heiran said, after I steal the horse, I will stay and hold them back, and the people below will bring the horse back to the camp. The corner of Mu Yangling's mouth twitched slightly. With our cooperation, we can increase it by another 10%. Chi-Heiran nodded, then do this, you go back to sleep, and start to act after dark. Mu Yangling gave a and turned to go to his big tent. Seeing her leave, Chi-Heiran waved his hand and said, everyone go to bed, and start camping after dinner at night. Chi-Heiran came out with his scout battalion and personal guards in the name of inspection, and he was stationed 10 miles outside Hanshong Mansion at this time. Everyone knows that Chi-Heiran is the general's younger brother and has always been favored, so they don't try to stop him. Anyway, this young master didn't go far, and they can rush to help if something happens. The sun was still in the sky, and the entire camp was very quiet. Only some soldiers who were guarding the camp were still patrolling the camp. Chi Heiran also went back to his big tent to sleep. Before the sun set, everyone was called to have dinner. After the meal, everyone left in two groups. Chi Heiran looked at Mu Yangling and said, "I'll leave the soldiers and horses on this journey to you. You can go to the Jingguoyi station after they have ambushed." Mu Yangling knew that Chi Heiran asked her to help find the ambush location. In fact, the two of them had already found it during their on-the-spot investigation, but he was afraid that the soldiers' ambush below were not concealed enough, so he asked Mu Yangling to take a look. Mu Yangling complied, high-fived Chi Heiran and led them away. They chose the place to ambush with dense forests on both sides. Based on the principle of ambushes on high ground, this place is actually not suitable for ambushes, but the road here is flat, which is very suitable for horse racing. It was the end of autumn at this time, but the leaves in the woods were still dense. Mu Yangling arranged for them to ambush and asked them to use some branches as camouflage, so that as long as the people hiding underneath did not move, no one would really be able to see that there was an ambush underneath. "People," Mu Yangling said, "I know it's cold at night, but no matter how cold it is, you have to endure it for me. As soon as the pursuing Xixia soldiers arrive, do it immediately. Remember, talking and shouting are not allowed during the whole process. You are playing Jin Bing, you can't speak Chinese, at least you can't speak fluent Chinese, do you understand?" "Understood. Very well, let's lay an ambush here. If it goes well, you should be able to see your little general when the moon is in the sky." Mu Yangling took the remaining 3 people to the guard of the kingdom of Jin together. Side to go. The 3 of them are very flexible and run fast, so they were selected by Chi Heiran to follow Mu Yangling. At this time, the sky was completely dark. Mu Yangling lit a torch, walked in front, and whispered to the people behind him, "2 people, follow closely, don't fall behind." Datong looked around and felt that it was so dark that he couldn't see the direction at all, so he said, "Miss Mu, is this direction right? By the way, didn't we just pass here this morning? Stop talking nonsense and follow closely." The 3 of them looked at the forest where they couldn't tell the difference, and hurriedly followed Mu Yangling closely. In the silent forest, the 3 of them became more and more nervous, swallowing saliva involuntarily. Mu Yangling chuckled lightly, and the 3 of them scared almost fell to the ground. Mu Yangling secretly regretted that she should not have slept in the woods last night, but took them for a stroll at night to exercise her mental quality. Although he regretted it in his heart, Mu Yangling asked in a relaxed tone, "Do you know how long we have been away?" Erking said, "It must be an hour." Mu Yangling resisted the urge to touch his forehead, and said in a brisk tone, "Your calculation is too inaccurate, you only walked for 3/4 of an hour, you think the time is long because it is night, and you only see trees in the whole forest. In fact, you can listen with your ears, isn't it very noisy in the woods?" The 3 of them couldn't help listening to Mu Yangling's words. Sure enough, there were all kinds of insects and wolves, and Mu Yangling said relaxedly, "Actually, this is the same as the forest in the daytime. Don't always look at those trees. Look at your feet, are there any slight stampede marks under your feet? This is what we left during the day today. Now we just follow the same path. We walked past the big tree in front of us to the place where we camped last night. We spent the night there." The scene in the forest during the daytime could not help appearing in the minds of the 3 of them, and they immediately became less nervous. Only then did they have the time to look around. Xiaoquan said, "The forest at night looks dark, if you are not careful, you will really get lost. So after launching the attack, you have to follow my footsteps closely. If you run away, you should find a dense bush to hide and wait until dawn before going out of the mountain. Remember the marks I left yesterday and this morning. Are you staying? Remember. Follow the mark and go out. If you run to a place beyond the mark, whether you can come out depends on your luck." The 3 of them couldn't help becoming nervous, and Mu Yangling said again, but you don't have to be particularly afraid. Do you still remember the methods I taught you to distinguish directions? Remember, Datong said, you can watch the sun, and if there is no sun, you can watch the branches and leaves. Our camp is in the southeast. A smile appeared on Mu Yangling's face, and he said, just remember it. Mu Yangling suddenly put the torch on the ground, and said in a low voice, going a little further is the guard of the kingdom of Jin. Put out the torch. After Mu Yangling squatted on the ground and extinguished the torch with soil, she looked at the three people around her and asked, how, are you able to adapt to the darkness now? Tonight is a good day, most of the moon is hanging in the sky, and a little moonlight is shining through the leaves. Now the trees are not as dense as before, but there is some light. The three of them quickly adapted, and they all responded in low voices, Miss Mu, we can all see each other. Then let's go. Mu Yangling led them to sneak outside the guardhouse, lay down on the ground and look towards the guardhouse. Miss Mu, when shall we do it? Haze Hung, this is the time agreed by Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran. If an accident occurs, people will light the fireworks on their belts at the ambush site as a warning, and she will rush to help when the time comes. However, neither Mu Yangling nor Chi Heiran is willing to ignite this, because it will undoubtedly increase the possibility of Dezhou being exposed. But obviously, sometimes fate is not always on their side. Before Haishi, Mu Yangling saw the fireworks blooming in the sky. Datong almost jumped up and said in a voiceless voice, Miss Mu, something happened to the little general. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 246. Mu Yangling's eyes darkened, and he said, do it. He took out the arrow in the quiver behind his back, ignited it, and shot towards the guard of the kingdom of Jin. Mu Yangling moved too fast, and Datong had no time to stop him, so he could only shout in a low voice, Miss Mu, we have to rush to help the little general. So let's just fire a few arrows. Mu Yangling glared at them, ignite the fire, I'll shoot while speaking. Mu Yangling's second rocket had already flown out, hitting the flag planted by the central defender. The guard was in chaos. The three of them gritted their teeth and pulled out their arrows to help Mu Yangling light the fire. After Mu Yangling shot 5 arrows, seeing that the guards had already chased them in their direction, he said, run. The three of Datong hurriedly followed behind Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling seemed to be able to see at night, coming and going freely in the forest. The three of them stumbled and ran behind Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling ran for a while, then looked back, but saw Jin Bing's torch was far away from them, thought for a while and said, who still has a torch? Xiao Quan stumbled over and panted, I have. Ignite, I'll get it, you follow me. Miss Mu, lighting the fire at this time will become a target, Datong said. Shut up, their arrows can't hit us yet, hurry up. In your current situation, if you can't see the way under your feet, you will either be killed or captured. Xiao Quan immediately opened the torch and lit the torch, and she ran ahead with the torch. With the torch illuminated, the speed of the three of them was much faster, and they also pointed out the direction for the Jin soldiers who were chasing. They followed. Mu Yangling ran. After 1.5 chases, the angry soldiers on Jin's side came to their senses, and the leader shouted, don't chase, be careful, it's a conspiracy, go back and set up the guard post. But he heard the shouts of killing soaring to the sky in front of him, and the golden soldiers chasing him were startled. When he was really hesitant, a soldier with sharp ears heard a golden saying. At this time, Mu Yangling was pushing Chi Heiran away to avoid the cold arrow. He hid behind a tree and shot at the Xixia soldiers who were chasing him, and shouted, hurry up and shout to the soldiers who can speak the golden language. Chi Heiran was at a loss for a moment, then he went to grab the clothes of a soldier and said, hurry up. The man said with a mournful face, little general, I don't know what to shout. Just call it your grandfather's. In short, you can call it like Jin Bing used to shout at the gate of the city. He knew this. The soldier contemplated it for a while, his anger sank to his dantian, and he began to curse loudly in golden language. Chi Heiran looked at Mu Yangling, who had shot the arrow in vain, and waved at the soldiers behind him, "The archers shoot, and the others follow me." With Mu Yangling pressing the formation, Chi Heiran rushed into the Xixia soldiers in a short while. He fought like a god of death in close combat. The Xixia soldiers quickly discovered that he was the leading general. Soon Chi Heiran surrounded him. The 100 households in the scout battalion saw that the little general was besieged, and were about to call for someone to break through and save them, but they remembered Mu Yangling's death order and could not speak Chinese. He blushed immediately, and at the same time, Mu Yangling, who was standing on a high place, quickly discovered Chi Heiran's crisis. She drew out 3 arrows and fired all 3 arrows, opening a gap for Chi Heiran. Chi Heiran went to Mu. Taking a look in Yangling's direction, he jumped out of the encirclement. At the same time, the golden soldiers who were chasing Mu Yangling also arrived. When Mu Yangling saw it, he blew a whistle, which was the signal for retreat. Chi Heiran finally picked 2 people in succession and waved for everyone to retreat. The people in the scout battalion dragged the corpses and wounded of their own people on the ground and retreated to the forest on the left without saying a word. The red-eyed Xixia soldiers saw a group of golden soldiers coming out of the forest on the right. Thinking that the reinforcements from the other side had arrived, they rushed forward and killed them without even thinking about it. The Jin soldiers who were chasing after him were killed by the Xixia soldiers before they had time to see clearly the situation in the arena. They immediately thought nothing of it, picked up their knives and did it. And Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran had already led their troops away under the cover of night and trees. After running for a quarter of an hour, Mu Yangling stopped, stretched out his hand to make them stop, and said to Chi Heiran, "Count the number of people." Chi Heiran gave orders, and the Beihui of the scout battalion reported, "Little General, 9 were killed, 38 were injured, and 5 were seriously injured, all brought back. Stop the bleeding for them first, leave 5 people behind and then clean up the traces, and the others walk faster." Both Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran helped take the wounded, and after running for about an hour, they finally returned to the camp. The military doctor was already waiting in the big tent, and the 5 seriously wounded were sent in first. Mu Yangling knew how to deal with simple wounds, so she wanted to stay in the big tent to help, but Chi Heiran pulled her out and said, "There are enough military doctors." After pulling her back to the big tent, he said angrily, "You are a girl, how can you bandage a man? You will be more conscious in the future." Mu Yangling stared and said, "What are men and women divided into on the battlefield? They are all your soldiers. I know, so I am responsible for their lives and deaths. You are not allowed to go to the military doctor's tent again. You are a girl, so don't see what you shouldn't see. In the military doctor's big tent, most of them don't wear clothes." Chi Heiran's face turns black whenever he thinks of this. "Don't wash it, we'll talk about it when we return to the city tomorrow." Chi Heiran feels that the large tent is not very safe now. It seems that the shadow of the light will shine on the tent, so it is better to wash it after going back. "No hurry, I want to ask you what happened. Why did you act so early?" How to act and when to act, they all calculated through calculations, but the Xixia soldiers arrived at the place half an hour earlier than planned, and the number of people chasing them was more than twice as many as they calculated. The group of gold soldiers was brought over to share the force, and they had killed enough Xixia soldiers before, so they might not be able to come back tonight. Chi Heiran sat on the chair and said seriously, "Someone seems to have come to the Xixia guards. They found the horses just after they were driven out. I thought all the soldiers and horses were attracted to the front. Who knows? Half of them stayed in a large tent, and the situation was too urgent at that time, and I didn't have time to think about it." "How about the people who attracted the troops?" Mu Yangling asked anxiously. "They have already withdrawn, don't worry, they are familiar with the shortcut, so there are not many casualties. However, the number of troops chasing us is more than twice what I imagined. Didn't they just steal more than 100 horses from them? Do you have to work so hard? As soon as the words fell, someone outside wanted to report the situation. Chi Heiran didn't shy away from Mu Yangling, and let people in directly. General, all the horses have been taken to the Xiangshan Guard, do you want to go and have a look? Chi Heiran asked with bright eyes, how many horses are there? 178, General, there are still 8 good-grown horses inside, the person who came to report also said with bright eyes. The Reborn Wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 247. Did anyone notice it? Chi Heiran asked. The movement of more than 100 horses was not small. Don't worry, General, we walked around the city and entered the guard directly, without disturbing the city. In other words, no one except Chi Heiran's subordinates knew about this matter. Very well, those horses haven't been bred yet. Detain them in the previous horse farm and let the guards step up their inspection so that no one will find them. Xiangshan Guard is yours, Mu Yangling asked. Chi Heiran nodded, brother has allocated the place to me. In order not to attract attention, I built a guard there to cover up the racecourse, Chi Heiran said. Before I was not able to keep the racecourse, this racecourse was all can't be exposed. Do you think you can hide it? Mu Yangling asked with wide-eyed eyes. You must know that Xiangshan is only 30 miles away from Hanshong Mansion. Chi Heiran said strangely, why can't I hide it? The guards are all my people, and the 50 miles northwest of Hanshong Mansion are included in the 5th Battalion, and they are all my territory. If I can't even hide this, I'm still a general. Mu Yangling stopped talking immediately. Isn't there anything detailed? Chi Heiran relaxed on the chair and said, even if there is a spy, it is still in the 1st Battalion and the 2nd Battalion, and the spy who can reach my 5th Battalion will probably be caught soon. Transfer all the soldiers who were guarding the 5th Battalion to the Xiangshan Guard, and with your extra training and torture in the previous year, they should not let go of a spy who tried to sneak into the guard. Mu Yangling, I'm going to bed, it's almost dawn, isn't it? Chi Heiran looked at the hourglass, and said, go, you can sleep for an hour, and we will enter the city before dawn. In order to conceal people's eyes and ears, they will enter the city as soon as the city gate is opened. At this time, it is still dark and there are no people in the city. They can put the wounded on the carriage or let them walk in the middle, so as not to be seen as much as possible. Mu Yangling closed her eyes and fell asleep as soon as she lay down, but she didn't dare to sleep soundly. She woke up as soon as there was a voice outside, and she got up and opened the big tent. Chi Heiran turned to look at her, awake? Let's go then. Mu Yangling rode beside Chi Heiran on horseback, and the soldiers who opened the city gate checked the tokens, took another look at Chi Hao carefully, and then let them enter the city. Chi Heiran settled down the wounded soldiers, and arranged the funeral of the casualties before he had time to catch his breath. At this time, Mu Yangling had already taken a bath and went back to sleep. Chi Heiran simply washed his face, then went to pat on Mu Yangling's door, and pulled her up from the bed. Come with me to see our results. Mu Yangling closed his eyes and said, just go and see for yourself, why do you have to drag me? Chi Heiran seduced her, don't you want to learn how to ride a horse? How can you learn it without your own horse? Since you made a great contribution last night, I will give you one. Mu Yangling woke up immediately, really? Chi Heiran nodded, when did you ever tell a lie? Mu Yangling jumped up and said, then you go out first, I'll get dressed soon. Only then did Chi Heiran realize that Mu Yangling was only wearing his underwear. His face flushed immediately, he immediately turned his back, walked out quickly, and tripped over the threshold when he went out. Mu Yangling just woke up, his mind was still a little confused, he just thought that he was excited, so he went forward and closed the door, thinking that he was about to have a horse, and jumped on the ground twice excitedly. A horse, a horse. After Mu Yangling changed his clothes, he ran to La Chi Heiran, let's go quickly, and I will ride my horse home tomorrow. However, Chi Heiran shook off her hand as if frightened, his ears were as red as fried shrimps, and when he saw Mu Yangling looking at him with wide eyes, his face became even redder, and he snorted, "Men, what a mess it is." After speaking, he walked ahead. Mu Yangling scratched his head and muttered, "Aren't we always arguing?" Mu Yangling ran to chase Chi Heiran. Chi Heiran kept a straight face the whole time and did not talk to Mu Yangling. At first Mu Yangling thought it was a novelty, but he was halfway there. No matter what Mu Yangling said to him, Chi Heiran turned his face away. She, Mu Yangling, also became angry, and shouted, "Didn't I just hold your hand? When we were fighting, we hugged and rolled together, and I didn't see you say anything at that time." The accompanying guards all pricked up their ears to listen, and secretly glanced at the two of them. Chi Heiran's face turned red, his eyes were red, he stared at Mu Yangling and stammered, Who hugged you?" Mu Yangling stared back at him, and shouted angrily, "I hug you." The guards showed a look of sudden realization, and they all turned to look at Chi Heiran. Chi Heiran almost fell off the horse. He pointed at Mu Yangling with the whip and was speechless. Finally, he swung the whip in anger, and the horse sped up and threw Mu Yangling behind. Half of the guards immediately went after him, and the other half stayed by Mu Yangling's side. Mu Yangling gritted his teeth, not knowing what Chi Heiran was up to, but still speeding up his horse and chasing him. After running for about 2 miles, Chi Heiran stopped his horse and waited for her by the side of the road. Mu Yangling rode up beside him and asked, "What's the matter with you?" Chi Heiran snorted, and answered the wrong question, "There will be barbarians haunting this area, you follow closely." After finishing speaking, he rode his horse and left, but his speed was much slower. Mu Yangling stared at his back for a while, and finally caught up. Seeing that Chi Heiran had already run to the front, the personal guard said to Mu Yangling in a low voice, "Miss Mu, the little general is waiting for you because he is worried that you will be in danger on the road." Mu Yangling followed Chi Heiran to the Xiangshan guardhouse. Behind the guardhouse is the horse farm left by the former Jing Kingdom dignitaries. The 178 horses that were robbed last night were locked in the stables. Perhaps because they were not used to the sudden change of place, the horses were a little restless. Mu Yangling looked over and said, "These horses are quite big, and they should be able to go to the battlefield by the end of next spring. I'm not in a hurry next year. I plan to keep some of them as stallions." Chi Heiran touched the head of one of the foals, then turned to ask the soldiers accompanying him, "Didn't you mean 8 grown-up horses? Where are they?" "It's in the stable in front, because they are grown ups, so I put one alone." The soldier paused and said, "Little general, the saddle has been installed right away. This horse probably has an owner." Mu Yangling laughed with a puchi, "Which horse in this row doesn't have an owner?" The soldier blushed and said, "Miss Mu, what I mean is that those 8 horses have been domesticated and recognized as their owners. You can find out after looking at them." The horse breeder said that those 8 horses are good horses. Not for people to ride. Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran looked at each other, and went to the stable together. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 248. The 8 horses were tied up in a separate shed, and they were a little restless, ignoring the hay in the manger, kicking and stomping non-stop, and making dissatisfied noises from their noses. Chi Heiran came over to see, frowned, and said, "Who told you to lock them together? Separate the switch so that they can't see each other, and can't hear each other's voice." Master Ma hesitated and said, "Little general, I'm afraid this will anger these horses." Chi Heiran snorted coldly, "Anger is only temporary. When they are alone and helpless, I will see what kind of temper they still have, so separate." Master Ma was invited by Chi Heiran to raise horses. He has experience in raising horses, but he has never been on the battlefield. He thinks Chi Heiran's behavior is not good. But the soldiers only listened to Chi Heiran's order. As soon as Chi Heiran gave the order, someone stepped forward and pulled out the horses inside and locked them up separately. Quiet. The only horse that did not calm down was surrounded by Chi Heiran and the others. The maroon horse has smooth curves, and Mu Yangling drooled, "This is a good horse." Chi Heiran chuckled, "You can call it a good horse just because it is handsome, but it is indeed a good horse." Chi Heiran looked at its hooves, then at the saddle on its back and said, "It's original. The owner should also know this," so he raised his temper, "This pair of saddles is worth no less than 100 taels, and its owner is either rich or expensive." Mu Yangling was speechless, so it was because of this horse that those people chased so hard last night. As for it, no matter how good this horse is, it doesn't take so many soldiers to chase it. Mu Yangling said this suddenly. After a pause, he said seriously, "So last night there were all the important people in Xixia's guard." Chi Heiran also frowned, "The border of the Three Kingdoms is a dangerous zone, who would go there in the middle of the night without incident? Even he was strictly forbidden by his elder brother to set foot there, it was too dangerous after all." Chi Heiran recalled the chase last night, but felt something was wrong in his heart. The people in the guard were not only trying to recover these stolen horses and show off in front of the big man, some of them were biting them tightly. It seems to be chasing a certain treasure. Chi Heiran's eyes lit up, and he waved them all back, leaving only his own soldiers to stand nearby. When Mu Yangling was considering whether he should also retreat, Chi Heiran pulled her into the horse pen, and said in a low voice, "Look around to see if there is anything on the horse." Mu Yangling looked up at the horse carefully, and finally his eyes fell on the saddle behind it, and said, "Saddle." Chi Heiran's eyes flashed brightly, and he stretched out his hand to touch the saddle carefully, not letting go of a single corner. The bay red horse was a little restless, and after Chi Heiran gave him a cold look, the horse was suppressed for a while, and then became more honest. It thinks that the man's aura is stronger than that of the owner, and the horse thinks that he is a smart horse, so it's better to know the time and affairs. Mu Yangling touched carefully from the other side, but the two of them touched the saddle again and found nothing. Chi Heiran frowned. Could it be that he was thinking wrong? Mu Yangling stood aside and thought, "Chi Heiran, try riding a horse." Chi Heiran frowned and said, "This shed is so short, how can I ride?" "Then go out." Chi Heiran pulled the horse out. Mu Yangling looked up and looked around, finally pointed to a place and said, "Go there, it's a blind spot, no one can see it from high places." Chi Heiran showed a smile, pulled the horse over and stood in a blind corner, let the guards stand far away, jumped on the horse. Mu Yangling stood aside and looked at him, and asked, "Suppose there is something important in the saddle, he will definitely put things where he can see or touch them at any time, and he is riding a horse, which position is the most suitable?" Chi Heiran pondered for a while, and was about to bow his head when Mu Yangling said, "You have to look straight ahead, you can't always bow your head while riding a horse." Chi Heiran moved his hand, touched the strap of the saddle in front, and said, "Here. This belt is optional, but people riding horses like to hold on to this place." Chi Heiran has always held a rope with one hand and a weapon with one hand, and never touches this place. Chi Heiran drew out his dagger, and riding on the horse, he carefully opened the belt. Once the skin was peeled off, a small roll of silk was revealed. Because it was rolled into the size of a belt, it was stuffed in strips without any wrinkle. Chi Heiran couldn't touch it. He pulled out the silk and stuffed it directly into his arms, jumped off the horse and took the whole saddle down, called his own soldiers to hand the horse over to him. Look carefully, don't let it get away. The soldiers responded, and watched the little general leave with the saddle in his eyes full of confusion. Could it be that the little general has been tossing so long for the saddle? Wouldn't it be enough to untie it in Mapengli just now? Could it be that this pair of saddles is not suitable for this horse, so I plan to change it after a trial ride? Then it seems that this horse is the little general's favorite, so I must look after it. The soldier said to the horse master, the little general has taken a fancy to this horse, you have to take good care of it. When Master Ma heard this, he naturally didn't dare to be negligent. In the future, when soldiers in the army came to pick horses, they immediately excluded this horse. In the end, no one except Master Ma and a few soldiers knew that the horse was at the end of the stable. There is actually a deluxe room containing the little general's reserved horse. Chi Heiran found a room to go in with Mu Yangling. This was also left by the former owner. After all, it was a race course. When he came to race horses, he had to have a place to rest, so the interior was fully equipped and the house was well built. Chi Heiran threw the saddle on the ground and left it alone, took out the silk and unfolded it. Mu Yangling had already lowered his head and turned around. When Chi Heiran saw it, he wondered, what are you doing? It's a secret, I'd better not read it. Chi Heiran said, you don't know much about the secrets. It's not too much, and it's not too much. Come here quickly and see what it is. Chi Heiran looked down and opened his mouth. Mu Yangling had already turned around to look at it, and opened her mouth wide when she saw the pattern on it. Although she didn't understand the words on it, she understood how to read the pictures. Okay. Mu Yangling asked hesitantly, is this the defense map of the Kingdom of Jin? Chi Heiran's expression turned cold, but his eyes were as dazzling as the sun. He looked at Mu Yangling and asked in a low voice, do you think this is true? Mu Yangling was also brilliant. He stepped forward to check the map, touched the ink on it, and said in a low voice, it's been a long time, but it's not ruled out that someone deliberately drew it to confuse people. Chi Heiran put away the picture and said, whether it's true or not, you'll know by 11 Xia's reaction. Mu Yangling said, you have to tell the general. Chi Heiran was a little afraid of being punished by his elder brother, but thinking of the consequences of this matter, he still gritted his teeth and said, okay, I'll go back with you tomorrow. Chi Heiran rolled the picture into a small ball and stuffed it into his arms, but he felt that his arms were not safe. Seeing that he had changed places several times, Mu Yangling looked at his boots and said, although they stink a bit, I think it's better for you to put them in socks. Chi Heiran blushed, and said, master's feet don't stink. Mu Yangling's idea was hidden in the socks. When he unbuttoned his shoes, he saw that Mu Yangling was also looking over, so he growled in a low voice, you're a girl, so you should be more reserved. Turn around. Mu Yangling opened her mouth wide, you took off your shoes, not your clothes. But she still turned her back, so she didn't see the red tips of Chi Heiran's ears that seemed to be on fire. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 249. Chi Heiran took Mu Yangling to pick out horses. She didn't say she wanted the 8 grown-up horses, and Chi Heiran didn't mention letting her see them. Regardless of whether the defense map is true or not, it's very dangerous, so the horse can only disappear in the end. In the end, Mu Yangling chose a top-notch horse among the almost perennial horses. Chi Heiran gave her a better one. Mu Yangling shook his head and refused, be low-key. Chi Heiran frowned, what's so low-key on his territory? But seeing Mu Yangling happily stroking the selected horse, Chi Heiran didn't object anymore, and just asked her, give it a name. Treading snow? No trace? Flying? Lightning? Thunder? When Mu Yangling spit out a name, Chi Heiran's face darkened, and finally interrupted her, I think it's called Heijun, and calling it by other names is also a joke. Chi patted the swarthy body of the horse, and said, its speed is average, and it is not good enough for a good horse. When you grow up, I will help you choose a better horse. Heijun seemed to know that Chi was talking about himself, and he snorted a little unconvinced, and Mu Yangling hugged its neck and said, even if it is not the fastest, I like it, it is already mine. The horse is dead, and I won't replace it unless it dies of old age. Treating the horse is the same as treating your own gun. Even if it is not the most advanced, it is still your partner and the one you are most used to. A gunner will not change his gun casually. Heijun seemed to be able to hear what they said, and turned his head to Mu Yangling spiritually. Seeing this, Chi raised his eyebrows, and pursed his lips while watching Mu Yangling, who was playing with the horse. Now that we have chosen it, let's choose another set of saddles. We have to go back to the city first, and set off for seeing Zhou Mansion early tomorrow morning. Because Mu Yangling's horse was underage, Chi didn't have a matching foal, so they had to go to the city to buy it. Hanshong Mansion was once occupied by Hu people, and there may not be anything else in the city, but there are many saddles, and you can see many shops in the prosperous areas of the city. Chi handed over the horse to his personal guards, and took Mu Yangling in to pick it out. Seeing Chi with a group of people behind him, Xiao knew that a big client was coming, and hurriedly welcomed them in. What do you want to choose, my lord? Show me the small one. Saddle, Chi pointed to Heijun at the door, give him a saddle. Oh, that's a divine steed, young master, I'll match it for you, young one. Xiao turned to go to the good saddle. Mu Yangling blushed, grabbed Xiao and said, this horse is mine, the saddle is just plain. Here, Xiao looked at Chi a big deal is about to fly. Chi waved his hand and said, just take out the things. Xiao responded happily, then turned around and took out several pairs of good saddles. Chi asked Mu Yangling, which one do you want? Mu Yangling's male comrades told her that the most fearful thing about shopping with a girl is that the girl refuses when she wants it, and they have to spend a long time persuading her. Mu Yangling glanced at Chi and saw that he was determined, so he really chose among these saddles. Chi was really happy to see it, and pointed out to her, these pairs are all good, and they all suit Heijun. Then try it and see which one it likes. Chi helped her put it on. When putting on a pair of maroon saddles, Heijun snorted and turned his head towards Chi for the first time. Mu Yangling walked over and touched its neck, you like this? Heijun lowered his head, Mu Yangling smiled and said, okay, then use this pair. Chi went to check out, took out a sign when he got to a place where Mu Yangling couldn't see, and said to Xiao it will be recorded in Mr. Fan's account. Xiao took the sign in a daze, and immediately came to his senses, bowed with a smile and said, young master, wait a moment, I'll write it down for you, little one. Xiao took out an account book and recorded it, and Chi thought of asking, how much is this saddle? Master Hui, 62 taels, you see, it's all written down for you. Chi looked down, nodded and said, understood. He took the sign and put it in his arms, turned and went out. Mu Yangling had already mounted his horse and waited for him. When he saw him coming out, he asked, how much? Chi waved his hand and said, it's just a few pennies, let's go back quickly, take a good rest today, and hurry up tomorrow morning. Fan Zijian, who was doing accounts in the Ruyi building, suddenly sneezed and frowned slightly. Didn't he catch a cold? He put down the ledger and asked, when will our horse be delivered? Young master, at the speed of the caravan, we should arrive in 5 or 6 days. Do you want to tell the fourth son to get ready? Yan Mo asked. Fan Zijian's mouth twitched, and he said happily, he goes to see his race course every day, and he has already made enough preparations. This is a surprise for him, or don't tell him yet, and when the horse arrives, I will take it directly to the race course. He went to see. As soon as the words fell, the shopkeeper below brought a clerk up. "My lord, this is the clerk from Chenji Madian, and he is here to pay the bill." "Check out," Fan Zijin asked strangely, "when did I go to Chenjima's store to buy something?" "Just now, I kept the accounts blindly for the customers," the clerk said hurriedly. "I used the brand of Ruyulo, because at the end of the month, our shopkeeper asked me to come out to pay the bills." Fan Zijin took it over and took a look, and Chi Heiran knew what was going on when he saw the signature on it. Although he felt that 62 taels of saddles were too expensive, he waved Yanmo to bring the silver. The guy breathed a sigh of relief, and said with a smile, "Mr. Fan, that Mr. Chi was in a hurry before, and the younger one forgot to tell him that if the saddle needs to be changed in the future, you can come to our shop directly, and the shop will repair it for them for free." Fan Zijin raised his eyebrows and asked, "Who else is there besides Mr. Chi?" "There is another girl named Mu, and that saddle is bought by that girl Mu." The smile on the corner of Fan Zijin's mouth fell, and after waving his hands to let the shopkeeper go out, he asked Yanmo, "Why did Miss Mu come to Hanshong Mansion?" Yan Mo was also confused. Miss Mu doesn't have any adult males in her family, how could she come here with confidence? Fan Zijin pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, "Forget it, let them go, but don't let too many people know about Miss Mu's visit to Hanshong Mansion. Although I don't know what the two are doing, but my intuition is not a good thing." "How are the preparations for the silk house?" Fan Zijin asked. "Don't worry, my lord, the shop has been renovated, and we can open it only after Chen Guanxi delivers the goods." Yan Mo hesitated. "My lord, is it really okay for us to leave them alone and open the shop?" Fan Zijin sneered and said, "I didn't even think about opening a shop by myself at first. If they didn't keep the price down too low, why would I want to open a silk and satin shop by myself?" He had just opened a restaurant, and he spent so much money to buy horses. It was really a tight time. If it weren't for the few landlords and merchants in Hanshong Mansion to keep the price too low, he would have to tighten his belt to open a shop at this time. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 250. Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling hurried back to Xingzhou Mansion. Chi Heiran's horse stopped in front of the general's mansion, and said to Mu Yangling, "I will ask my personal guard to escort you back. It's only half an hour's journey, and you still need to send it?" Let them send it off. Although he felt that his actions that night would not be known, it was better to be cautious. Mu Yangling had no choice but to take Chi Heiran's 4 personal guards home. She was riding an army horse, but she was pulling her black steed beside her. The black steed was still young, so it would take a long time to ride it, but the nearly one-day journey from Hanshong Prefecture to Xingzhou Prefecture was still too strenuous, so Mu Yangling just run with it. It was already dark when we returned to Chinggutun. Mu Yangling got off his horse, handed the horse to the 4 guards, and said, "Just send it here, it will make too much noise if you go in." The 4 guards clasped their fists together and said, "Then let's take our leave first, Miss Mu, go slowly." Mu Yangling nodded and led Heijun home. Mu Bowen jumped off the Kong and ran out when he heard the movement in the room. Through the moonlight, he vaguely saw his sister outside the door. Mu Bowen jumped up happily and shouted, "Sister is back, sister is back." "Shh," Mu Yangling put his finger on his lips to signal him to be quieter, and said in a low voice, "Don't disturb other people's houses." The aunt, Shu Wanyang, and others in the room all opened the door and came out, and they were greatly relieved to see Mu Yangling come back. "You kid, you thought you couldn't catch up?" Seeing the horse behind Mu Yangling, Ziyuheng asked with sparkling eyes, "Cousin, what is this?" Mu Yangling touched Heijun's neck and said, "This is our horse." The 3 children all opened their mouths wide and gathered around together. Bowen touched Heijun's hair carefully, and asked in a low voice, "Sister, is this horse really ours? How much does it cost?" "It doesn't cost money, it was given by Chi Hair, and Mu Yangling arranged Heijun in the shed, gave it the fodder for the rabbit, and said along with his hair, "You just make it up first, and I'll see you tomorrow. Go and buy you high quality fodder. Grass, hay, and wheat straw are all rough materials. It is impossible to feed horses with only these, otherwise Chi Hayaran would not cry poorly and say that raising horses costs a lot. In addition to coarse materials, he has to feed them with fine materials, such as soybeans and peas. Wheat and wheat bran, and sometimes even some vegetable oil is poured into the wheat bran. This is the general treatment for horses, and the food eaten by Maxima is even more refined. Of course, with corn, another species has been added to the horse's diet. The advantage is that corn is more productive than any of the above concentrates. Since Mu Yangling decided to treat Heijun well, these things are of course indispensable. But the most important thing now is the rituals for the younger siblings. Mother, are the things for Bosi and Kiji ready? It's all ready. Shu Wanyang looked at Heijun and said, tomorrow is too messy. Isn't it appropriate to keep the horse at home? It's not good to startle it. It's okay. I'll take it to the backyard of the new house early tomorrow morning and lock the backyard. No one will know that there is a horse in it. Then you have to get up early tomorrow. Your cousin and aunt will come over early in the morning to help with cooking. Mother, don't worry, I have to go to the city to buy fine materials for it. Mu Yangling was not willing to wrong this little friend. The aunt pulled Shu Wanyang's sleeves and asked her to ask Mu Yangling what she had been doing these days, but Shu Wanyang just smiled and said, okay, it's getting late, you guys go back to sleep. Aling, there are still people in the kitchen. There is hot water, so hurry up and take a bath, and mother will give you hot water. Mu Yangling breathed a sigh of relief, and she naturally saw her aunt's actions, and she was glad that her mother didn't ask anything. When my aunt saw that Shu Wanyang didn't ask, it was even more difficult for her to ask. Seeing that the mother was so indulgent to Mu Yangling, she could only sigh slightly, waved to the children and said, okay, okay, go back to sleep well. No one is allowed to be lazy tomorrow, everyone has to get up early to help with work. The first birthday ceremony is very grand. Although the preparations have been made the day before, it still takes a lot of time to cook and cook the next day. Fortunately, with the help of Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Zhang, although the Mu family was small, there was no trouble. Mu Yangling fed some fine ingredients to Heijun, and when she came back, she saw Lu Zaishi bending over to wash the vegetables. She hurriedly stepped forward to grab the work in her hand, and said, Aunt Ting, didn't you let you rest? Why did you start again? Lu Zhao said with a smile, you really made it like mud. Your aunt and I are in good health, and it's not like doing heavy work in the fields. No matter how much housework you do, you won't be tired. As long as you work, you will be tired. Mu Yangling pulled her back and pressed her on the chair to finish, looked at her stomach and said, okay, you are not tired, just for my peace of mind, I won't see you get pregnant. People suffer. Mrs. Lu and Zhang laughed out loud when she heard this in the kitchen, and said, Aling is not at all like a child from our countryside. How could he not work in the fields while pregnant? Back when I was 7 she was still in the ground at 8 months. Your Aunt Ting didn't take any rest when she was pregnant with Oolong. It's because Wanyang was lucky that she was held in her mouth as soon as she was pregnant. It used to be held by a stone, but now it's held by a daughter. Thinking, oops, I think every day, why didn't I give birth to such a girl who can be rare? Lu Ma said with a smile, in the next life, a girl like Aling has never seen such a capable and caring girl in 3 generations. Wanyang has accumulated a lot of blessings for several lifetimes with a girl like her. I'm happy to have me in my next life, which means I'm also accumulating blessings in this life. Lu Zhang smiled triumphantly. You are so beautiful, I handed you a pole, and you really climbed up the pole. Lu Mashi teased her, and everyone laughed when they heard this. The guests came one after another. Mu Yangling took Ziyuheng to set the table out, and Lu Lang and others helped to serve the dishes. Although drooling looking at the dishes on the table, everyone didn't set down their chopsticks. Instead, they all looked at the table in the middle, which was piled up with things for catching up. It was the first time they saw such a neat Joe catch ceremony. As soon as the auspicious time arrived, Mu Yangling stood in front of the stage and cupped his hands and said, "Everyone, today is the first birthday of my brother and sister. Thank you elders for coming to bless them. I won't gossip. Now the auspicious time has come. Let's just get started." Bosi and Kijia, who were wearing bright red blessing clothes, were carried up, and Mu Yangling and Mu Bowen took them over and put them on the stage together. This action should have been done by Mu Shi, but Mu Shi was not there. According to the rules, it should be done by Bo Wen, the elder brother. It should be the same. The children were placed on the table, their eyeballs were rolling. It was the first time for them to be watched by so many people, and they all looked around with interest, turning a blind eye to the things on the table. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 251. Xu Wanyang clapped her hands to attract their attention, pointed at the things on the stage and said, "Go and choose what you like, go quickly." Everyone booed and told them to go, and Ziyuheng even picked up something and shook it to attract their attention. Kijia stared at Ziyuheng's hand for a while, then lost interest, turned her head to look carefully at the people watching them, and thought of something funny, suddenly giggled and laughed. Bosi looked up seriously. He glanced at his sister, then turned his head blankly and continued to stare at the guests. 3 black lines slid down Mu Yangling's forehead, and she was thinking about cheating to help them sweep things in front of them, but Kijia stopped laughing and turned her head to look at the things on the table. She supported the table with her small hands, first pouted his butt, and then got up with difficulty and staggered towards a lot of things. Everyone who was worried about the silence breathed a sigh of relief, as long as they are willing to do it. Kijia wanted to kick something with her feet, but she was barely able to walk. How could she be able to kick something? As soon as she lifted her foot, she fell to the ground with her buttocks. It might hurt a bit. She froze for a moment, and then looked at him blankly. "Mother." Xu Wanyang hurriedly turned her head aside to not look at her, but Kijia touched her buttocks with her small hands, and then went to look at her mother, just in time to catch her mother looking at her. Kijia burst into tears with a wow, and opened her hands aggrieved and asked her to hug him. Xu Wanyang pointed to the things on the table and said, "Keep good boy, first pick up something you like, and mother will hug it later." Kijia didn't listen at all, and burst into tears. Xu Wanyang couldn't help becoming anxious. Bosi finally looked over at this moment. He looked at his sister, then at his mother, and then showed a disdainful expression on his face. Mu Yangling swore that he was right, it was just a look of disdain. Bosi got up from the ground, trotted to Kijia's place, and rubbed her face directly with his little hands. Mu Yangling thought that he might want to wipe away tears for his sister, but he didn't seem to be successful, so he wiped her tears full. "It's all over the face, it's better not to wipe it." Bosi also noticed this problem. He squatted his legs in front of his sister, looked at her face, and finally grabbed his sister's sleeve and wiped her face. Mu Yangling almost wanted to hide his face, and the courtyard was silent as everyone looked at the 2 brothers and sisters on the stage. Bowen tugged on his sister's sleeve and said in a low voice, "Sister, why don't we help our younger siblings?" "How can I help you under the watchful eyes of everyone?" Bowen tilted his head, put things in front of them. Mu Yangling looked at the field, broke the jar and said, "Forget it, they are still young anyway, let them play on it." Kijia was made unable to cry by her brother, and when the sleeves were finally let go, her nose was red and the tears on her face disappeared, but there were some suspicious objects on the sleeves. Bosi looked at his sister's face and was satisfied. He stood up with his little hands on the ground, and pushed all the things around his sister. Kijia probably thought it was fun, forgot the grievance just now, and got up to follow. My brother pushed the things on the table over to make a pile. The aunt saw that it was getting late, so she couldn't help becoming anxious, and seduced the two children. Bosi, Kijia, hurry up and choose something you like, and after you have chosen, Auntie will give you sweets. Bosi looked up at his aunt, and casually picked up the book at hand and gave it to her. The aunt said with a smile on her face, "Okay, after choosing the book, we Bosi will take the imperial examination to become a high official." The surroundings also hurriedly echoed, "Bosi is smart at first glance, and he will definitely be able to study and become a high-ranking official in the future." Bosi tilted his head and looked at his aunt in doubt for a while. Seeing that she didn't pick it up, he threw the book in his hand. He was on the edge of the table, but when he threw it, the book fell to the ground. Bosi lowered his head to look, and Kijia hurriedly crawled over to look down. Maybe because he thought it was amused, he threw down the things next to him, clapped his little hands and laughed haha while throwing it down. Bosi may still be thinking about what his mother and aunt said just now, thinking that they want the things on the table. He keeps picking them up and offering them to them, and throwing them down when they don't want them, and then chooses the next one. Shu Wanyang /U0026 Ant. Fortunately, there were a lot of things on the table, but when Jia was tired of throwing them away, she felt that it was no longer fun. She began to look at the things on the table seriously, and when she saw the bright color of the rouge, she picked it up and looked at it. Everyone praised her for being beautiful when she grew up. Exit, she threw it aside, grabbed a book on the side with great interest, opened it like her elder brother, pointed to the words on it, and said words that only she could understand. Everyone was quiet for a while, and then said in a hurry, "Kijia must be a talented woman in the future." But Bosi grabbed a wooden sword on the table. The wooden sword Shu Wanyang chose had small animals engraved on it. He may have been attracted by those animals, and kept holding the sword to study. Everyone was relieved now. They all praised, "Bosi is going to be a general in the future." Shu Wanyang didn't dare to let the two children stay on the stage anymore, and was about to hug them down, when Kijia looked up and saw the sword in her brother's hand. Her eyes lit up. She grabbed the book and crawled over to grab the sword in her brother's arms. At the same time, Shu Wanyang and her aunt were just about to pick them up, but Kijia screamed and held onto the wooden sword in her hand, while Bosi hurriedly yelled wow and refused to give it to him. Kijia grabbed the book just now and stuffed it into his brother's arms, about to snatch the wooden sword. Bosi didn't even read the book. He held the sword in one hand and pushed his sister with the other. After a while, the two of them fought together, and Shu Wanyang and her aunt couldn't break them apart. Mu Yangling didn't want everyone to watch the fun, so he stepped forward and carried the sword and the book back to the house, and put the two little ones on the Kong, and they were still fighting. Mu Yangling patted their heads and said, "Go ahead, as long as you don't hit anyone, Ziyuheng, watch them, and don't let them hurt their eyes with their swords." "How can you be such a big sister? Take them apart quickly," said the aunt. "If they take it apart, they will definitely cry," Mu Yangling said. "There are so many guests outside, let them grab it, anyway, they don't cry." According to past experience, it will be fine after the two children decide the winner will not show off, and the loser will not cry. How wonderful. Shu Wanyang originally wanted to separate the two children, but she turned around and went out as soon as she heard it, and even pulled her aunt, "Forget it, let them grab it." Sure enough, as soon as the two little ones were put on the Kong, they immediately snatched them up again. Bosi grabbed things desperately and pulled them towards him without saying a word. Kijia likes to shout and pull, while screaming wow, and from time to time speaks some children's language in an attempt to persuade or attack Bosi, while pulling towards himself. Mu Yangling and Bowen watched with great interest, but in the end Bosi felt that it might be boring, so he let it go, and Kejia snatched the wooden sword. Probably because she felt embarrassed, Kejia hugged the wooden sword tightly, and stuffed the book that she had eliminated into her brother's arms, saying flatteringly, "Ah, ah." Mu Yangling laughed out loud, touched Bosi's head and said, "Bosi, this is from my sister." Bosi looked at his sister, finally took the book a little aggrieved, unfolded it on his calf, and went to read it by himself. Kejia was satisfied now. She turned around holding the wooden sword and went to play by herself. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 252. The atmosphere on the border suddenly became weird. Zixia and Jin fought inexplicably. Zixia accused Jin of violating the covenant and robbed their horses and asked them to return them. Jinguo said that Zixia raided their guards, and the matter of stealing horses was simply nonsense. Because Zixia lost an important thing, and that thing was about Jinguo, they were very guilty. They suspected that Jinguo got the information and came to snatch back the defense map. The third prince of Zixia, who was in charge of bringing the defense map back, could only send people to investigate secretly, while arguing with the kingdom of Jin. He firmly believed that the person who stole the horse that night was from the kingdom of Jin, or that their purpose was not the horse at all, but the country of Jin. The arming map in the saddle. Trying to mislead him by wearing Dezhou's military uniform? The third prince Li Ningling sneered. Dezhou had just captured Hanzhong Mansion and was hugging the city with all his strength. How could he come to provoke Xiaoguo? The kingdom of Jin suspected Dezhou. Although the men who came to attack the guard that day wore Zixia military uniforms and used Zixia arrows, the soldiers who chased them saw that some of the retreating people were wearing his Jin Kingdom military uniforms. But they have never been able to find out who these soldiers are. This inexplicable battle obviously caused them to fight between the kingdom of Jin and Zixia, so they thought it was a trick of Dezhou. But this topic was just brought up, and before they had time to discuss it in depth, they were irritated by Zixia's endless begging for stolen military horses, and the purpose of the captured Zixia state spies was to find those horses. It's just more than 100 horses. When did Zixia become so stingy? Jinguo aggressively wanted to find out, but Zixia became more cautious. On the side of Hanzhong Mansion, Qi Ziyuan didn't investigate the authenticity of the defense map after seeing his younger brother, but directly ordered Hanzhong Mansion to loosen and tighten inside. The defense outside did not change, but the soldiers of the 4th Battalion were quietly sent to Hanzhong Mansion to closely observe the situation, and if there was any change, they would guard Hanzhong Mansion. Qi Heiran originally thought that his brother would punish him, but Qi Ziyuan only verbally told him to be more thoughtful in doing things in the future and ignored him. Qi Heiran scratched his head, leaned in front of his brother and asked, "Brother, do you think this picture is real or fake?" "You can tell if it's true or not," Qi Ziyuan said, "but now is not the time to fight. We have to raise our soldiers and horses first, and then we will use Jingzhou Mansion for experiments." Qi Ziyuan put the picture away, took his younger brother to his bedroom, knocked out a dark brick under the bed, and exposed a small space. He put the box containing the picture in, and said to him after he exited, "This is my brother's hidden room. Apart from this picture, there is only one soldier talisman in the secret place. You have to remember it." Qi Heiran nodded. At this time, Fan Zijian, who sent the horses to the racecourse, saw the horses in the stables jumping up, and shouted angrily, "Qi Heiran, you didn't tell me." Yan Mo and Master Ma are 3 feet away from Fan Zijian. In the end, Yan Mo shrank his head and said, "Young master, the 4th young master may have been too busy and forgot. Look, how do we arrange the horse we bought?" "Arrangement for what?" "All back. I don't want it anymore." Fan Zijian was so angry that he didn't tell me when he bought the horse. Fan Zijian paused, then turned his head and asked, "Where did he get the money?" Yan Mo shook his head blankly. "Could it be given by Mr. De Biao?" Impossible, it's impossible for me not to know that the big cousin gave him the money. Fan Zhaijin looked at the horses suspiciously, and said, isn't it stolen? Master Ma didn't know the origin of these horses, he only knew how to raise horses, so facing Fan Zhaijin's eyes, he immediately shook his hand and said, Mr. His personal guard sent it over. Who else but them? Fan Zhaijin asked suspiciously when he thought of Mu Yangling, who was haunting Hanshong Mansion a few days ago. Oh, there's also a Miss Mu. Fan Zhaijin lowered his head and pondered, neither of these two people is a rich owner, and the horses he bought didn't come so quickly. A while ago, Heiran was pestering him to borrow money to buy horses, and now so many ran out. Horse. Although he was very reluctant to think about it, Fan Zhaijin still frowned slightly when he remembered the news about Zixia and Jingguo these days. In just a few days, Zixia and Jingguo fought a few games at the junction. Fan Zhaijin still heard that it was a group of missing horses for Zixia. Fan Zhaijin suppressed his temper, and said, forget it, send someone. No, there are too many people, go and call the soldiers of the 5th Battalion stationed in Hanshong Mansion, and tell them to start building stables. The weather is going to be cold now. If one of the 200 horses I bought at a huge price dies, I will make Chi Heiran pay for it. Fan Zhaijin gritted his teeth at the end. Yan Mo didn't dare to say that these horses were originally given to the 4th son, so he could only agree, turned around and ran to order. When Chi Heiran returned to Hanshong Mansion from seeing Zhou Mansion, and excitedly ran to the racecourse to see his horses, he saw Fan Zhaijin sitting at the door with a dark face as a supervisor. Chi Heiran happily ran over, showing off, Zhaijin, I was about to tell you that I have a horse now. Well, Fan Zhaijin replied indifferently, raised his eyebrows and said, I know, didn't I send it to you? Chi Heiran was taken aback for a moment, and was about to say that he snatched it by himself, when Fan Zhaijin pulled him closer into the room, and Fan Zhaijin snorted, do you think not many people know about it? Dezhou is going to deal with a golden man now. The country is already full of difficulties, and now you are going to provoke Zixia. But robbing is robbing, Fan Zhaijin said, but this matter cannot be spread. Chi Heiran shouted, I didn't beat the gongs and drums to announce, I just told you. After speaking, he sighed and said, so now I don't dare to tell about the horses in the racecourse, and even the fine materials have to be bought with the help of my elder brother. Otherwise, as soon as I show up, everyone will know that there are horses in my racecourse. Fan Zhaijin snorted and said, from now on, you can tell others that you have horses in your racecourse, but there are only 200 horses, and you can increase it slowly. Chi Heiran's eyes widened, where did the horse come from? Bought it. Fan Zhaijin became angry when he thought of this, I originally wanted to give it to you as a birthday present, but now I changed it, and I borrowed it from you. Chi Heiran just smiled, stepped forward and put his arms around his shoulders and said, I know, I gave it to you, thank you, brother, let's go and see the horse you bought. The pony that Fan Zhaijin bought was much smaller than the one that Chi Heiran snatched. After all, he bought it for Chi Heiran to raise, but Chi Heiran snatched the pony that Zixia was about to put into use. But Chi Heiran was still overjoyed seeing so many horses. Fan Zhaijin said, don't be too happy. I've seen it for a few days and it started to get cold. You have to hurry up and build a stable. These little ponies can't stand the cold. Chi Heiran loved these foals much more than he did, patted his chest and said, don't worry, I will definitely take care of them.